Why did Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department care more about what happened involving the murder of Tupac Shakur than Tupac Shakur himself? This is very interesting when you pay attention to the dates. Let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like the cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY, Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. I'm going to get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a widely asked question. And partly I understand the reason why. And a lot of people who asked the question were actually right in regards to what Vegas knew about the murder of Tupac Shakur, what Keffe D had already confessed, what they didn't reveal to the public at that particular time. And it's very interesting when you pay attention to the dates. So I'm going to take you through this because this is very interesting when you understand and then you see the dates and you see how it is, what they did, why they did, and then understanding that why Vegas didn't move. I don't think that they really cared about Tupac Shakur per se, or the effect that it would have on the town that's still being allowed to go forward now with Keffe D being locked up and facing the murder in the case of Tupac Shakur. But I want you to pay attention to this. Check it out. So now, this is from the secret, I would say, affidavit or case involving Keffe D. And this is about the defendant's admission in 2008 related to the murder. So look, said prior to December 18th, 2008, the defendant was a target in an investigation of a task force created to investigate the murder of Christopher Wallace, a.k.a. Biggie Smalls. As a target, he was caught trafficking in large amounts of drugs. Now, we know where they got that information from. They got that information from none other than Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. He has confessed to that over the internet, saying that, yeah, I was saying that, Keffe D, was responsible for the murder of Biggie and his folks, right? Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. gave them that information. But it says, pursuant to that investigation, the task force officers approached the defendant, Keffe D, seeking to interview him about his knowledge of the Christopher Wallace murder. The defendant denied any involvement in the murder, however, volunteered his knowledge about the murder of Tupac Shakur. Now, you got to understand, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., once again, didn't know anything or claimed to not know anything about the Biggie situation, but would point the finger at Keffe D. For whatever reason, we don't know that. But we know now from what Keffe D had confessed in telling them about the Tupac murder, right, leads in a whole different direction. So defendant denied any involvement in the murder, however, volunteered his knowledge about the murder of Tupac Shakur. Thereafter, on December 18th, 2008, pay attention to the dates. 2008, December 18th, he provided a recorded version of events similar to his other recountings of the murder, all of which was consistent with the known evidence from the early investigation. On March 9th, right? March 9th, 2009, the defendant became an active confidential informant for the task force. Now, I want you to see, the reason why I say 2009, because remember, this is in around the same time that Keffe D gave the statement, if you will, he gave the statement, excuse me, he gave the statement to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department in around 2009, December 18th, 2008, right? And then shortly after that, right, he became an informant on March 9th, 2009. You know, funny enough, right? March 9th is when Biggie was murdered, right? So he became an informant on the day that Biggie was murdered. Now, not the exact day, but on March 9th in 2009, the defendant became an active confidential witness. So Keffe D became a witness for the task force, right? Check it out now. I want you to pay attention to these dates. So now, in and around at the same time, unbeknownst to the public, Keffe D had went and talked to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. So this is where when people say, well, why didn't they do anything? You can see why now. Keffe D was acting as a confidential informant, right? Vegas knew what they knew, and it wasn't until Greg Kading dropped murder rap that everyone was aware. But check it out. The defendant's effort to corroborate the conspiracy, because they didn't really want to take his word alone. So guess what? On June 17, 2009, the defendant and the task force officers traveled to New York in an effort to capture incriminating evidence from Eric Zip Martin. On June 19th, 2009, defendant acting in an undercover capacity approached Martin's place of business and ran into Mr. Martin on the street. Mr. Martin greeted the defendant excitingly, and they had a social conversation. Thereafter, Mr. Martin, his nephew, and the defendant got into his nephew's blue Cadillac DTS and drove over to see Mr. Martin's sister. After returning, the defendant tried to enlist Mr. Martin in an effort to traffic narcotics. Mr. Martin indicated he was out of the business, but directed him to conduct his drug activities with the nephew. Thereafter, the defendant and Mr. Martin socialized in Mr. Martin's restaurant for several hours. Now, very important, because unbeknownst to the public, Keffe D was working in an undercover capacity. So when he went to speak to the Las Vegas Police Department, this is the reason why they didn't do anything. And then I'm going to show you another reason why, because they knew under the law, they had to kind of respect the proffer agreement that he had, the deal that he had did on December 18th, 2008, right? But little did the public know, or basically anybody knew at that particular time, and this comes out later, is that Keffe D was working in an undercover capacity trying to frame up Zip and trying to basically corroborate what he had told Greg Kading in the task force about the $1 million hit, right? And the money allegedly being given to Eric Von Zip, if you will, right? So if you can understand that, you understand now why, okay, Keffe D gets this hell of a deal, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, he becomes a witness, and check it out. This is the crazy part, right? It said the defendant maintained that he was provided immunity for the murder of Tupac Shakur in exchange for his statement, right? So Keffe D, in a statement, basically Keffe D saying that he was given immunity. It says defendant maintained that he was provided immunity for the murder of Tupac Shakur in exchange for his statement. While there is some evidence to suggest that there may have been some sort of proffer agreement between California, the state of California, and law enforcement or federal enforcement, either in 1998 or 1999 or 2008. Excuse me. So basically, it's confirming that Keffe D was basically telling since 98, 99, and knowing that he got the deal involving the Tupac murder, in 2008. One has yet to be located. So I guess the agreement had remained hidden or whatever, and but it since has came out in court when he tried to file a motion to dismiss, and he tried to use that argument about him having immunity, but he didn't. It was a proffer agreement. However, even if this statement may not be admitted in for the truth of the matter asserted, it certainly is admissible to attack the defendant's claim that he only made up these stories for financial gain. So, excuse me. So Keffe D, in saying, yo, you know what, I made up this story for financial gain, this is where they're going to get him at. But more importantly than that, I think the most important part about this, and I'm going to show you this, check this out. So now, even with that being said, now you look at this. But LVPD had no role in the Joint Task Force agreement, right? And Vegas detectives did not promise never to prosecute Davis. So when he went to talk to them, they never promised him anything. He just did that voluntarily because he was working undercover. You see how, so, the feds told Vegas, look, we got him on an undercover basis. Working as an undercover informant. He's going to come talk to you guys. He has a proffer agreement, and they were in agreement to respect that, right? So, they never agreed. Vegas never agreed not to prosecute him. According to the interview and recordings and transcripts previously reviewed by ABC, only that they were not there to arrest Davis at the time. So now, this is during the interview, they basically telling Keffe D, Vegas is telling Keffe D, in and around that 2009, he made the statement in 2009, did the deal in 2008 of December, right? Basically, they told him, according to the interview recordings and transcripts, right, only that they were not there to arrest him at the time of the confession that he gave them, which was not a proffer, but rather a voluntary statement, prosecutors have said. And in fact, that time, Davis acknowledged that no authorities from Las Vegas had promised him anything. So Keffe D knew that Vegas didn't offer him any kind of deal, right? But there was concern among Vegas authorities then in 2009 that Davis would argue in court that both sets of the alleged confessions were inadmissible because the proffer gave him immunity, even though Las Vegas police had no role in making the agreement. Basically, you understand what I'm saying? So now, understanding that, when you understand it, now you get it, the bigger picture. So Keffe D was an informant, working with the FBI, working with the task force, trying to hem up Zip, trying to get the confession in relation to the $1 million hit with Puffy. I'm trying to continue the conversation about whatever, they were looking for from Zip, but I guess Zip was smart enough not to fall for it. You know what I mean? Was like, hey man, I'm out the game. You know what I mean? So, but I think Zip probably was smart enough to know that Keffe D probably was hot. You know what I mean? And just probably, if you can see how Keffe D act now versus, what Zip being a street guy, being a, one of those guys who were legendary from the streets, would understand it, like, this kind of don't look right. They went over to Zip's sister house. You could really feel out the vibe. You understand what I'm saying? From that perspective, and peep out a person's conversation and seeing what they talking about. So I think he peeped that out. But more importantly, we understand now why Vegas didn't do anything, because they were hemmed up. But in their interview, they just basically said that they were not there to arrest him at that particular time. And, Keffe D basically, he hung himself, man. This is crazy because he got the deal of a lifetime. And he messed that up. He messed it up. And I think he really, truly, honestly now understands that from a larger perspective of what that is. So like I said, when he goes into court and when the trial, this right here, this piece of paper right here basically says it all day long. they basically saying, look, in 1998 he was a government informant, in 1999 he was a government informant, in 2008 he was a government informant, right? And so one has yet to be located, the proffer agreement that he was talking about. However, there was a proffer agreement, right? However, even if the statement may not be admitted for the truth, right? Even though it may not be admitted for the truth of the matter, right? Asserted, it is certainly admissible to attack the defendant's claim that he only made up the stories for financial gain, in which he was basically saying, you know what? I lied. I made it up for financial gain. It's not going to fly. It's not going to fly. And so, like I said, Keffe D needs to strike a deal with the DA, because he's not going to beat this case. You know, from what I'm looking at and all of the voluntary statements and how they mapped it out, him being an informant from 98, 99, 2008, him admitting to the murder to the task force, the feds, and then going to Las Vegas and doing it for them too. Yeah, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. I think Keffe D need to soon work out a deal. So I just bring you this information so that the people can really understand what was going on at the time. Because a lot of people, like I said in the beginning, always ask that question. Yo, well, why didn't they do it? Why did they lock him up before? You know what I mean? That's the reason why they didn't lock him up before. He was working as an undercover. He was an undercover asset, you know, and for whatever else, you know, they wanted to, you know, try to get somebody hemmed up or whatever have you, right? You know, like I said, and I think more importantly, you know, what they probably have not said was that they was going to try to send Keffe D at Puffy to try to get that money. You see what I'm saying? But it probably didn't. It just didn't pan out. It didn't pan out. You know what I mean? I'm wondering if Zip might have called Puffy and be like, look, yeah, that dude came to see me talking about, yeah, whatever. You know, and people talk and you know, people with money can get people to talk and reveal things that they normally wouldn't be able to have, information and things like that. So yeah, this is very interesting, ladies. You know, ladies and gentlemen, tell me what you think down in the comments about this. Your boy DELRAY, straight gang.